Unity of the Huachucas presents Reverend Sue Oliver.
The Freedom of Forgiveness, a Sweet Release.
All right. So we get to let go of whatever's come before and whatever's yet to be and settle into this moment and this moment as we connect and commune as this wonderful, wonderful community here. Present, open, and available for the power and presence of God, the essence of the universe, that is wonderfully expressing itself on this glorious day and every day in every way. And so I give great thanks for the hands, the hearts that created this beautiful, wonderful space, this experience. Those who are here in form and those who are watching maybe in the future and those who are getting the little hit that they're want to come and check this community out. I give great thanks for being able to be present and available and allowing this wonderful service to unfold magnificently, perfectly, divinely. And I let it all be. It is already so. Gratefully, I say, and so it is. Amen.
Amen.
Let's go.
I release and forgive everyone and everything. I am open to the power of Spirit as my life.
I've got my little stopwatch here, and I've got my really big talk drawn out. Somebody said I should put these around my room or something, but for those of you who haven't seen, that's kind of how I like to put my words down, kind of creatively. Last time I was here, it was icy, snowy, and I think 32 degrees, and it's probably 50 degrees warmer now, and it's a beautiful day. And I'm so grateful to see each one of you. Thank you for having me back. When I heard the talk theme around forgiveness, I was like, oh, really? Because not everybody really wants to kind of come together and talk about forgiveness. And I thought, how about if we have fun with forgiveness? A little bit of fun with forgiveness, right? So we can do that. We can. So the truth of the matter is that the key to freedom is forgiveness. And so the truth, the nonfiction story is that we're all the divine, magnificent God, consciousness, Christ consciousness, energy of the universe sitting right where we are. I love coming in and seeing each one of you and remembering myself, who I am, and how each one of us is a unique, magnificent expression of God, love in action. And that's the truth. That's the truth. And so right where you are, God is expressing as joy, enthusiasm, love, release, connection, health, vibrancy, and so much more. Infinitely, constantly, instantly. It can't help itself. It is right where you are because there's no separation. There's only oneness. Like, that's the truth. That's the real deal. We talk about in Unity and New Thought that is really kind of the absolute. That is like the way it is. The truth, the light, the love. And we experience this truth when we remember our divinity. And then there's this whole thing called forgetting. And forgetting. Remembering, forgetting. Remembering, forgetting. So, remembering who we are in each instant. I am always learning that lesson. And forgiveness is when we forget. When we forget who we are. Forget who we are. Forget the truth. Right? And so, Jesus said, love thy neighbor. The greatest commandment was love thy neighbor as thyself. That first part of it. So loving thy neighbor. So the absolute ease and grace in remembering who I am is super simple and usually easy when I'm by myself. It's when I come into relationship. It's when I'm driving on the road, when I'm having a conversation that's not going the way I want it to go, and conflict ensues. Have you ever had conflict? Have you not had conflict? And so what if conflict is inevitable, but the resentment and the stories that we end up, maybe it's just me, telling myself around what just happened, either something I did or I made a mistake, We don't talk about sin. We say sin is really missing the mark, right? When I grew up, it was something different. And now we just say, hey, it's a mistake. I made a mistake. And yet I tell this story about I'm not this, I'm too much that, and all the things that I tell myself when I make a mistake, no matter how big or small. And I'll talk about a mistake I made in a little bit. So conflict is inevitable in just simply being human. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, and we bump up against each other, and we experience conflict. We get to choose what we make of that conflict. And I say that because I'm a gardener. I love composting. At one point, not here in the desert, but in San Diego in particular, in Seattle, I loved worm composting. Has anybody done worm composting? Okay. It's so cool. You take all your fruits and vegetables and you put them in, and the worms start eating it, and then they poop. And you have compost, worm compost. It is like the richest, most amazing stuff to put in your garden. And so I thought, wow, that's kind of what we can do with the things that arise, the conflicts that come up in our lives, either in our own mind when we're dealing with something we experience, or when we're in community, which happens. And so conflict is inevitable, but resentment is optional, and suffering is a choice. So we get to decide. And I got to thinking about the ego. Like, what is that little voice that says, you're not enough, you're too old, you're too this, it is like the ego, the edging God out. You've heard that. Edging God out. And the ego, my ego, I don't know about yours, it can get really loud and really critical and really say things that even my worst enemy wouldn't say to me. And when I forget, I listen to it and I start to take it in, and I forget my divinity, who I really, really am. We see that on the individual level. We see that in a community level sometimes. We see that in the state. We see that in the nation. We see that in the world, yes? That there are this whole conflict turning into a lack of forgiveness, resentment, bitterness, anger, verging on hatred, wars and things. And it doesn't have to go down that way. It doesn't have to be that way. When we talk about a world that works for all beings, is a world where we remember that forgiveness is the key, and forgiveness is a choice. And so if the truth is that we're all the divine in form, and that's the nonfiction, then the fiction is that when we hold a grudge, it is spiritual sludge. So we're literally blocking the flow. One of my mentor ministers, used to be a senior minister at CSL in Seattle, said that the lack of forgiveness is not only blocking the flow, but the key to prosperity in all aspects of our life is letting go and forgiving ourselves first and foremost. And in fact, self-forgiveness is the key, the first step. And I have a couple quotes here. I wanted to start with the sludge, right? That the grudge is the spiritual sludge. And I wrote here, I drew like a little pile of doo-doo here. And it says that it's blocking the flow. And the quote I have from Desmond Tutu says, this is what he says about this: until we can forgive, we remain locked in our pain and locked out of the possibility of experiencing healing and freedom. Locked out of the possibility of being at peace. You talked about the hot air balloons. It's almost like that we're being weighed down, and we allow ourselves to basically not be able to move by choice, and we forget that we have the key. It's like right there. It's actually right here. It's who I am. I am the key. You are the key to freedom. So I really love that quote by Desmond Tutu. And then the question really becomes, what is freedom then? And what is the freedom of forgiveness? When I've taught or led workshops on forgiveness, here are some of the things that forgiveness is not. And you may be very well aware of them. Forgiveness, to forgive oneself, which is the highest level of forgiveness. And I would say, I am not able to forgive other people until I forgive myself in any situation that has arisen. So forgiveness is not about condoning. It's not saying, oh, that's okay, no big deal. And it's not about doing a spiritual bypass and saying, oh, I don't feel those hurt, those angry feelings, or whatever that is. So it's not that bypass. It's not necessarily forgetting, right? It's about remembering who we are, the divinity in form. But maybe it's not so much about forgetting, because maybe I really want to remember what the trigger was. I say that I walk around sometimes with this Velcro of things, right? My hot buttons, where somebody is like, says that, it's like, and for me, it's people telling me what to do. Hierarchy. Does anybody have that? It's like, I don't like to be told what to do. And so I just like have this Velcro. It's like, oh, and then I remember, oh, and letting it go. And forgiveness is really not even, I don't use the word I'm sorry, because I believe that when you put a word after I am, it's creative. It can end up, so I am sorry, I apologize, or I accept an apology. But I've started to notice where over the years I got so used to say I'm sorry. And so another way to look at it is I apologize. And I set the intention to remember who I am and to remember who you are, or who we are together in the moment. And then this whole aspect of judging, right? So the ego loves to judge. And so to forgive is not necessarily trying to be perfect. It also is not passive. So forgiveness is power. Forgiveness is strength, to be able to let go and let God and remember in the moment and literally press that reset button is power. So it's not weak, it's not settling, it's not passive. And then the book that I actually opened up for this particular theme was Reverend Dr. Roger Teel's This Life is Joy. Discovering the Spiritual Laws to Live More Powerfully, Lovingly, and Happily. And here's what Reverend Roger, he was the senior minister at Mile High in Denver, Colorado. He says, the foundation of all forgiveness is love. The foundation of all forgiveness is love. I remind you, again, of one of the most beautiful and empowering biblical statements. Perfect love casts out fear. That's 1 John 4:18. However, the first application of this love is not towards the other person or persons you may have been resisting or resenting. The first step is to throw wide open your heart, and to allow the love of God to fill you, heal you, renew you. Feel the fear dissolving in the healing balm of love. In this love, passionately embrace the feeling that you are enough, that you have never been inconsequential or flawed. All of that was a lie, and I would say all of that is an ego lie. Allow divine love to soothe you, caress you at depth. Next, practice loving yourself and feeling solid and strong in this love. So we're told as ministers that when we share on a talk that we need to be completely on the other side of whatever we're sharing and have it healed and revealed, and then we can actually share it with others. Well, I was thinking about the examples I was going to use, and I'll use one that I'm on this side of, and it's still, I notice I have a little Velcro around it. So I am on an online spiritual singles dating site, and I will not go into the details of it because that would not be appropriate, but it is a conscious spiritual singles dating site. And I came across somebody who, and apparently this is a thing, did not tell the truth about his age by a decade. A decade. And this is somebody who is steeped in New Thought principles. And really, and so I noticed that for me, resentment kind of boiled. It's like I really was like going to let this person have it. And I just said, hey, I noticed this, and so we had a discussion. It was really not quite a conflict, but inside I was making it mean a lot of stuff. Oh, well, maybe I should not tell the truth about my age. And when just 5 minutes earlier, I was thinking, oh, I'm the divine informed. Age is just a number. I'm blessed to be on this earth. I'm so grateful. And then in a moment, I could switch and all of a sudden start to feel diminished and let my ego take charge and start to feel less than and feel like, oh, now I've got to play this game more. And so, I look at that and go, I'm the key to forgiveness and freedom what's another way to look at it? It's not to condone and say, oh, that's okay, let's all do that. What it was really been for me is to remember who I am, keep coming back to who I am, magnificence in form. And that what's out there, because forgiveness is an inside job. So here's what Reverend Rogers says are kind of the steps or categories of moving into forgiveness. And so the first step is a willingness. A willing to be willing. And that's for me, in this instance, was really hard. It was like, well, that person's wrong, I'm right, and I got into that whole, that's another thing forgiveness is not. It is not righteousness. It's not like, well, yeah. And I started to go there. So willing to be willing and to ask myself the question, Reverend Rogers says, can I forgive this? Am I willing to forgive this in every situation that arises? Now, I believe we can all forgive. It's our divine true nature, but there's a willingness to be and do that. Number 2, Reverend Rogers says wisdom. So, and that is one of the 12 powers in unity principles and teachings. So wisdom, knowing the truth, remembering the truth, and asking ourselves, when I ask myself, what is my soul's possibility in this? How can I take what just happened, whether it be a conflict or somebody that felt like a betrayal to me, and turn it into the compost, the consciousness of conscious composting, if you will, and turn it into something where it's revealing and I'm seeing the greater truth of who I am. So what is that? And what is my soul's possibility in this situation? That's number 2. Willing, wisdom, and number 3, www. World Wide Web, going within, remembering that forgiveness is that inside-out job, even though conflict can arise. Prayer, affirmative prayer, for myself or really sitting with somebody else that will hold. You have so many opportunities, right, to have somebody holding you in the light and knowing the truth. Praying to be willing. If the first W is willing, having somebody pray and say, there's a willingness. I feel and see and know that you're willing to let this go and to forgive. Meditation, there's meditation obviously here on the weekly basis. Journaling, one of the things Reverend Roger mentioned is letter writing. Writing maybe a letter, releasing, or just getting it all out and putting it in the ground and letting it compost. And then digging it back up and seeing if it's still there. And if it is, bury it again. Or we did burning bowl, right? Burning bowl is another way. You can burn it, you can let it float away. And then small groups, support groups. Sometimes it might be something that takes a little bit more gathering of folks that are going through some, particularly if there's significant abuse that's been involved or something that you really need to have some professional support with. And then last but not least, gratitudes. So I know that that resentment cannot hold sway and cannot hang out where gratitudes are happening. It's just not possible. And so just remembering and reminding myself all the wonderful things that are going on in my life and being grateful